16th day of January. Welcome back, everybody. Hope everybody had a good day. Hope you had a good day. It's the last show of the week. I might do another show tomorrow night or Saturday morning to try to make up, because we didn't do a show on Sunday. I'm getting old now, and it's harder to do things, especially when it's cold outside. Actually, I got a few giggities into his yet, though. We're going to do part 2 of the Freedom Information. Now, last night I lied to everybody and told them I put a link below the video. I looked after, I didn't. And so there's a link there. There's a link here tonight, too, for the FOIAs. Oops, I don't know how the hell I missed that one. I really don't, because it was at the top of my description, right? So when I put my description in there, unless they took it down or something, that don't make no sense, because you'll find the links to the 4 million emails in my description. Every show, it's there for every show, right? For 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. Okay, so we're going to pick up where we kind of left off last night. As I said, we got a poll for everybody. Now, we haven't done this poll forever. Did Fukushima nuclear meltdowns or radioactive fallout poison every species and every human on Earth and the moon? Don't forget the little green men that's eating the cheese up there. They probably got poisoned too. Okay. You know, years ago I used to really concentrate on not saying because people don't realize how many times they say it, but when you're editing your own video, you hear it like 200 times in a show, and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no concept I was doing that. But we've been using it for so many decades, right, that it's like a pause, like your brain is clicking and missing a gear or something. You're trying to remember something, and that's I think everybody kind of uses that phrase. March the 16th, House hearing. This was Congress. We covered that last night, right? But it's such an important story. We're just going to cover a couple of screen captures. Burgess was asking Jaczko, who was the head of the non-regulatory agency at the time, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But I don't know why they call them a regulatory agency when they don't regulate the rubber stamp industry. Jaczko said he wasn't familiar with the email, but there was an email circulated discussing high levels of radiation. And how could the non-regulatory commission, who's got satellites and everything else, not know about that email? See? Were elevated. And Burgess says, what level were they? And Jaczko replied, lethal levels. So why did he wait? Why did he say he wasn't familiar with the email when the proper response would have been, well, I don't know about the email, but there's lethal levels, which is completely different than high levels. High levels are scary. Lethal levels are lethal. So this is kind of the story we left. We never finished the story last night, but it's a really important story. I've been working with Todd Barber for 2 days via the phone. I need help. His concerns may merit talking to some technical experts in the Ops Center or forwarding it to the military. This was the Gulfstream company. And they were worried about their planes becoming radioactive, the engines becoming radioactive, the maintenance people, were they going to be in harm's way when working on the plane, right? And what about the water when they're washing the plane? Was that going to be radioactive? This is all absolutely true. This is exactly what was going on. But of course, the industry is never going to acknowledge stuff like that. He's with the Gulfstream Aerospace, and you really need to know what danger these exposed aircrafts pose once they are back from Japan. They know how to deal with the people, but don't know how to address the aircraft. What do you mean they know how to deal with the people? The plume was real. This was 19.5 days, 468 hours. So the plume unequivocally was real. Did I do that right? Yeah, you can call in 709. We're in Canada, 589-4406. I got a tendency to forget things because there's a lot going on, right? When you're trying to talk about nuclear and you're not allowed to make even a Freudian slip. Because if I make a Freudian slip, that gets clipped out and they'll string them together eventually and say, look at this guy, he's a friggin' idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And you know, the majority of the people that are interested in this subject will ignore those clips, but there are people out there that won't. And so you chip away, that's what it's all about. And when you're being chipped away at from 1,000 different public relation firms, which is my case, which is a terrible, terrible, terrible. There should be more suckers like me out there talking about nuclear so the industry doesn't focus just on me. What the fuck is wrong with you people? Get out there and take a beating for the team here. You have 1,000 public relation firms with over $1 billion a year to protect the nuclear industry. And there's nobody out there to chase away, right? And chasing me away doesn't work. Never going to work chasing me away. Is the water, all it does is just, I dig in deeper. Is the water they use to clean it contaminated? Yes. Someone has to know that maybe the military, well, any academic would know it. Waste of time asking them, they're not going to acknowledge it. The Japanese are hiring planes to take them out of these locations because the commercial airlines won't go into the nuclear wasteland. That's what they meant to say, but they forgot to put that there. In particular, he wants to know what isotopes are coming out of the reactors. There's about 1,000 of them, and their half-lives. So the industry really likes to conflate things, right? So-called natural radiation, for instance, say uranium, the natural stuff that's from the solar system, the 308. It's got a half-life of 4.5 billion years times 10. Pretty impressive, right? And so what the industry has been doing for decades and decades and decades is saying that stuff like plutonium and curium, which has very long half-lives, they're not very harmful. Like potassium or like uranium-238, they're not very harmful. Uranium-308, rather. They're not very harmful because they have a very long half-life, but that's simply not true. The plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years, which is a 250,000-year lifespan, right? And it has that energy for 250,000 years. And the thing with when you change to you can't call it a decay because when it takes 24,000 years to decay to another isotope, that's not a decay. And its path to a decay is an explosion every second at the speed of light. Right, the word decay is used to, again, denigrate your ability to comprehend the enormity of the issue. So, plutonium and curium and americium, neptunium, and very long half-lives, right? They don't lose their energy. It's quite incredible because the industry has never been challenged for 80 years. And so they're very belligerent, these personalities, these little inbreeds of inbreeds. They're very belligerent people. They've never been challenged. They have no worries about being held accountable. And because they got decades and decades of this inbreeding, and their little inbreeds have the same personalities and attitudes and disrespect for humanity and the species as their parents and grandparents had. They're very flawed, right? They have a very arrogant flaw in their personalities. There's very high concentrations of hot particles like plutonium and americium. They're hot for 250,000 years. Breathe it in, you're going to have catastrophic health issues in a short order. Immediately, your body's going to attack it for the rest, every second from here on out, with white blood cells. Your body's not going to pass it out, like if you're breathing in millions of them in a day, your body's going to pass some out. There's no doubt about it, right? But if you're eating it, if you're drinking it, now it's organically bound, and so it's going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, your bones. It's never going to leave. It's electrically charged, and it clings to your muscles, your bones, your organs, like a magnet would cling to a piece of steel. If you put a magnet on a piece of steel, you come back in 10 years, it's still going to be there, right? This stuff is the same way. I mean, that story right there, just that acknowledgement from scumbag Helen Caldercott, didn't need to tell the story. And Ernie Gunnarsson, these are scumbags, both of them. I'll show you why. I'm not just going to... I don't believe in using that language without quantifying it. I wouldn't want someone to call me scumbag without actually proving it. And so I'll prove it for you very quick here. People are crazy, man. And because they're so public, they leave a long trail of their wickedness. And the problem with the subject is it's not a subject you can just rush through. So this is Ernie Gunnarsson. Now the video, I took a little clip and I put it in the fuel pool of this cutout of the reactors from Fukushima.
The Unit 4 was damaged twice. It was damaged by all of the earthquakes that occurred, and it was also damaged by a series of explosions over the first week or two of the accident. So the building is structurally weakened. Now, Tokyo Electric's acknowledged that. They went in May and June of last year.
Now, it didn't look like that. The fuel pool is at the top of the building, by the way. So I should have left that picture there for his whole propaganda piece. First off, he made the racks for the fuel assemblies for 70 reactors in the United States that are identical. Colors, schematics, everything's identical as the Fukushima reactors. So if he doesn't know where the fuel pool is, who the frig would, right? And it's a nuclear, there's 8 reactor cores were in the fuel pools at the top of the buildings. They're clearly gone. Now they're that's right alongside of reactor 3, which is a plutonium mixed oxide reactor that melted down. So there's zero possibilities that anybody's going to get very close to it, let alone inside of it, not die immediately. Reactor 3 is right alongside of it. So for him to suggest that somebody or TEPCO went in the building, now in 2013 they put this cover over the building. The fuel pools are at the very top of the building. That's the very bottom of the building, so the fuel pools are actually gone. And Arnie was in all kinds of the media stories saying it was like a crushed pack of cigarettes or something, right? Okay. Now, Helen Caldecott was asked, does reactor 4 look like this, or look like that. And it was the only time she's ever been challenged. And her response was, the little nippers are very tidy people. And yes, it does look like that, which is simply, and Helen Caldicott knows the difference. She's actually wrote 14 anti-nuclear books, which is quite concerning when you hear this. Now, she's done this interview hundreds of times, by the way, but this was the only time she was challenged.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
Of course, that's not possible. And bi-robots are actually humans. That's what they call humans. Bi-robot. Imagine describing humans as bi-robots. So they don't say humans. Eh? It's a really terrible industry. The people in it they're just really terrible people. They're terrorists, right? That's the best way to describe them. So back to this, in particular, he wants to know what isotopes are coming out of the reactors, their half-lives, and whether the water they're using to clean up the planes is contaminated. Well, the reality of it is you had every country done studies and models of the radioactive fallout based on pretty flawed numbers, based on venting when you can't. You're not going to vent anything out of these buildings. And in those days, those first few days, when the buildings actually looked like this, the first day the buildings looked like that, the next day they were saying they were venting from these reactors. So the cover story has been going strong from day 3. Well, day 1, I guess. But by the 15th of March, the cover story was hideous. And the thing with the lie is you've got to continue to tell the lie, reinforce the lie. And then keeping track of it is really difficult, right? Because you got so many participants. I've been at this a long time, and one thing I learned a very long time ago, because I was on the ocean, was you got to be honest, right? Because people killed, right? You got to be very honest. And being honest is hard. It's easier to be goofy and silly and make up jokes and stuff like that. But to be honest is, you really got to concentrate on it no matter who you are. And very honest people know what I'm saying is true, right? Very high concentrations of hot particles. That's bad. You should have banned in North America. That's the reality of it. Radiation levels on the West Coast spiked to 1 million times normal. This was the French government, the IRSN, the radiation of the government. Atmospheric emissions concentrations of cesium-137 levels, which pulses energy, by the way, 600 feet every second. So you got 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second, 600 feet. And the problem with this is you can't just have cesium, which is a gamma, and you're going to have alphas and neutrons and betas. And this is the plume, say, day 20 right there. And this is the French government, by the way. 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137. For every cesium-137, there's 100 times more strontium-90. Which is actually worse in many ways than cesium-137. Don't get me wrong, cesium-137 is nasty, but the biggest byproduct of the irradiated fuel rod, according to Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, and Dr. Raymond McGill made it, this is a Navy, the American Navy's research center, where they poisoned beagle dogs and beagle puppies for many decades, in large groups too, with plutonium and americium and curium. And curium is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod, not cesium. Cesium is brutal. So is iodine is brutal, but curium is much worse. And in fact, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium. So when you're looking at this model, this is an invisible snowstorm covering the entire planet. So think of a snowstorm that starts in Japan one day, and it never stops snowing. And by the time you get to 10 days, that's what the whole planet is starting to look like. And by the time you get to 20 days, right here, the whole planet is a snowstorm. Now, the snow never stops coming out. It never stops snowing. The snow never melts and never goes away. And it never stops snowing. So, like, we would get it. Everybody would have to get snow blowers and earmuffs. But it's radiation, and you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it or perceive it. But it's very nasty per isotope, per atom, physical atom. And you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. But only one atom is enough to frig up an insect, a bird, a mammal, an animal, or a human. And the industry is where it is. And almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. Okay, so when you have a plume like this, what the biggest takeaway, the most important takeaway of that, is also, everything I just told you is an unbelievably important facet of this story. And it's applicable to everything with nuclear. But the thing that everybody seems to be missing, first off, is all the fuel pools are splitting atoms into your environment. That's why fuel is dangerous. And so you have bioaccumulation every single day that never goes away. It's catastrophic, see, for everything with replicating cells. There's nothing out with autoimmune triggers to defend against it. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. If you're a bird, whale, mammal, moose, mouse, whatever, their bodies attack it every second for the rest of their life with white blood cells. There's no cure. You can't destroy it. But one of the most insidious facets of it is you got five really, but you got four types of emitters. You got gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas. And the thing about them is they don't like each other. They don't like if you take two different liquids, you can mix them together, but these don't mix together. And they're pulsing energy at the speed of light in every direction. And that pulse hits a gammas or an alphas or a neutrons or a beta, and then it changes direction, almost at the speed of light. So, like, don't try this, but if you got two people with baseball bats and you both swing at the top of their bats at each other, what's going to happen? Quite crash, right? And the bats are going to bounce away, right? And they might come back and hit you. But imagine if the bats were traveling almost at the speed of light. And imagine now that it's an invisible snowstorm. And think of it as a snowstorm. And think of each snowflake as an atom. But it's actually even worse. And think about the pulses of energy every second that they make, almost at the speed of light. And when they hit, gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas hit each other, they pound into each other and they change direction immediately. And so you have this ricochet effect. It's known as an X-ray. And so every species for 80 years has been getting full body X-rays due to the releases and the perpetual releases of the anthropogenic and dumping and detonations and everything else, because it never goes away. It never goes away. Imagine your garbage, and there's no such thing as a garbage truck. And every day you take your garbage out in the backyard, And every generation of your family is going to live in that same house. And so your kids will live there, and their kids will live there, and this will go on for a long time. And you're not allowed to take the garbage off your property. You're only allowed to bring it outdoors. That's it. Or you're not even allowed to do that. You got to keep it. You got to keep all your garbage indoor. What's going to happen to you eventually? You won't be able to stay in the house, right? So you got to go outdoors and live in the garden. But you got a rotten house, and your neighbors is rotten because they got the same attributes. So now we got perpetual radiation fallout. Imagine being a plane flying through this all day. Imagine what's going to happen to the filtration systems. They're going to be perpetually radiated with high doses. So even on the ground, where the air exchangers, and then all the tubes, the whole ventilation system is going to be incredibly radioactive. And there's another facet to this stuff where it's known as the Wigner effect. And the Wigner effect is just neutron bombardments upon material, and it breaks down the integrity of the material. And so if you take very high-grade steel and you bombard it with neutrons, eventually you can walk up with a 3-pound maul or a hammer and hit it, and it will split wide open or shatter like a piece of glass. And that's known as a Wigner. One of the ways to describe it is a Wigner effect. Another way is a neutron bombardment effect. But curium and gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas will have those same effects upon everything in the real world, not just at a nuclear power plant. And so the full body x-rays will sterilize the birds, the insects, the mammals, the animals, the people in increments over time. But Fukushima was a pulse event. We had 8 fuel pools and 4 reactors. Now, the stories out there, the reactor 4, of course, was in maintenance. So when they do maintenance, they're taking fuel every 14 months or something, but 1/3, 1/4, depending on the reactor fuel mixture, will come out of the reactor core, go into a fuel pool. The fuel pool is going to boil off about 120,000 liters a day. And each liter is going to be full of atoms because the fuel is splitting atoms. That's why the water is hot. That's how they boil water for millions of homes and businesses. The atoms are being produced. Once it starts the chain reaction, the fuel now is producing all these atoms. You can boil water for 1 million homes and businesses. It's pretty incredible. Once you take it out after 14 months and put it in the fuel pool, it's still splitting those atoms, and they're never going away. They're released directly into the environment. And the stupid industry, well, not stupid, but the sadistic industry, has the majority of these facilities are surrounded by farms. And if you look from a satellite, it'll be as far as you can see, typically. And water. The most precious, most wonderful thing on this planet is water. Besides me, of course, is water. I had to put that out there for get a few giggles out of a few people. I hear pro-nuclear, piece of shit, you're a dumb bag. You can call in at 709 scumbags, or good people, and you can call in. The pro-nuclear in particular can call in. Give me a call. Tell me I'm wrong. Make sure you can prove it too, because I can prove mine. That's why the nuclear industry doesn't bother me. They just censor me. And there's 1,000 public relation firms out there, so no matter where I show up, they're going to attack it. Nuclear contamination of aircraft operating in northern Japan. No, it's worldwide, right? It's not just northern Japan, it's worldwide. But these people are not aware of it. But you are, certainly now. Now you're very educated. Just that little bit there got you incredibly educated on how this works. So this is a real problem. This is not a game. This is a threat to everything with replicating cells and every species. Hence the reason we got this poll. It's been a long time since we had this poll. Did Fukushima nuclear meltdowns radioactive fallout poison every species and every human on the entire planet? Guess what? Yeah. I'm Todd Berber, technical specialist with Gulfstream Aerospace in Savannah, Georgia. Gulfstream is a division of the General Dynamics that builds business jets. Our aircraft are operated around the world and have range and capabilities to travel over 7,000 miles non-stop. They're not very fuel efficient, leave their particulates in the upper atmosphere, which is very bad. In the past 48 hours, we received requests from several aircraft operators regarding exposures to radiation from the Fukushima Daiichi plant. So this is on the 16th, I think. 17th. This is the French government model at 20 days. There's not a single airplane on the entire planet wasn't flying and continues to fly into these plumes. These are plumes you're looking at there are from the surface to upper troposphere and from the surface to the ocean floor. It's not just the airspace, the ships on the oceans, because they're taking ballast, right, aboard their ships all the time. And they're dumping that in countries that might not be as polluted. All of a sudden now, because of this, they go through like the Panama canals and the locks and the Great Lakes and that, and that's a big problem. As you see, U.S. citizens have or could have contact with these airplanes. The Gulfstream are nor do we employ nuclear experts, as this is not a normal operating environment. Actually, it is. After 80 years of emissions from nuclear industry, it never goes away. It's ridiculous. And the thing they got on their side is many. But the biggest problem is people can't see it, so they can't perceive it. But if you can see it, you'll be gone to war. I can guarantee you that much right now. You'll be gone to war, just like me. I am gone to war, right? There's no big secret. I am gone to war against this industry, and the players, the universities, the medias, have been co-opted since the 50s and 60s. And they've had a throttle the medias and the universities by the throat ever since. And now they have compromised the future of humanity. And it's not looking good. And so we're doing our part. And these shows are desperation. We're doing this in desperation, right? There's no fun in these shows. There's no joy in these shows. I put on a persona sometimes just to keep people around. It's a very morbid topic. It's a very difficult topic, and because it's an educational program, you can't educate anybody unless you're honest. Unfortunately, it spills over into your own life. And so I'm very critical of myself many times. I was critical of myself today. I was out in cold, miserable weather trying to get a tarp over my trailers so when the snow finally gets enough snow on the ground, I don't have to struggle to get the skidoo on to go and do some research. I think, what I got to do is I got to find an old skidoo track and just screw it into the deck of the trailer so my skidoo got something to climb onto. Because I was looking at that yesterday and I was like, that would solve a lot of problems, right? What is the life of the harmful isotopes that are in the atmosphere over the northern Japan and the plant disaster? Is there a length of quarantine time the particles would become safe? It'd be of no risk to personal. So, these people are clearly been indoctrinated quite a bit, but are not aware of servicing or maintaining an aircraft has come in contact with them. No, the U.S. Ronald Reagan changed out, I think it was 16 engines on their helicopters because they were so radioactive, doing search and rescue and dropping off water and food to the victims that weren't rescued. And so the media, this is what I mean by the media. You got the biggest medias pretending they're at the top of a building that don't exist. And where is that going to lead us to eventually? Highly radioactive glass rained on Tokyo at 500 billion atoms per kilogram. When you see the word BQ, it's a connotation of a becquerel. And a becquerel can't exist without an atom pulsing energy every second at the speed of light. That's what a becquerel is described as, that explosion. The industry wants to call it a decay, but it's not a decay when it can last for billions of years. It's an explosion, and it's every second. And they like using grammar to manipulate you and pacify you, and it's a very effective way to do it. And they wouldn't be bothering with it, see if it wasn't. Significant consequences for human health. Highly radioactive glass particulates. There was also the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. There's just a hideous amount of documentation on the different plumes of isotopes that were acknowledged in huge numbers. Pretending this didn't happen and that it's not significant and it doesn't warrant further investigation and education means you're a very disciplined slave. Scientists changes the understanding of the disaster extreme importance. Our idea of health implications should be changed. Again, because once it's in your body attacks it immediately every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. And so it's in your body, it pulses energy at the speed of light. It's wrecking chromosomes, DNA, cells, lesions through your organs. Your body tries to repair that every second and attack the source and eventually build a tumor around it. It just simply can't keep up with that. But what that means now is your immune system is compromised. So you're much more susceptible to pathogens and viruses, and you have to be careful around your pets because a lot of their funguses and diseases could cause you significant health problems because your immune system is compromised. Former top International Atomic Energy Agency official, actually Fukushima is a catastrophe for every citizen of the world. Radiation doesn't recognize borders. And dose from the Fukushima fallout in Europe was many times higher than California, the government claimed, for the West Coast, which was, some of the numbers were 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life. So it's going to wreck your glands, your pituitary glands, your thyroid glands, your adrenaline glands. But your thyroid means you're going to be producing radioactive hormones, and the insects and birds and your kids and your friends and your families and everything you care about for the rest of your lives. And then the industry knew this. The industry knows everything I'm telling you. The industry is aware of this, and they work really, really hard to make sure you don't. And if you can't find my videos, you'll never learn this anywhere else. Unfortunately, that's just and that was not that's not why I work so hard. So I don't run myself into the ground 7 days a week. Week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. I'm doing it because I'm trying to educate the population and the policymakers, the investors, and people that want to know. And the industry has 1,000 public relation firms dedicated to making sure that it's very difficult for you to find me accidentally. Unless you show up all the time, you're not going to find me. Fukushima is a catastrophe for every citizen of the world. Well, you can't just be a catastrophe for every citizen, it's got to be a catastrophe for every species too. If it's a catastrophe for every citizen, it's a catastrophe for every human. Radiation doesn't recognize borders. Radioactive fallout doesn't recognize borders. Radioactive fallout from the Fukushima fallout is higher in Europe many times higher than California. In fact, they do studies, sex ratio studies on entire countries and continents to see how much damage. That's how they quantify the damage. and you'll see more males being born than females is one of it, and you'll see less reproduction too, right? Duh, but, because you got less females and more males, you're gonna have less species. This is true for every species, though. And there's just a absurd amount of these sex ratio studies out there. Right after Chernobyl, they done sex ratio studies on Europe. And the first studies you do after a major nuclear fallout event is Down syndrome and autism. And then they'll focus in on that population area, and they'll do studies for the rest of your lives too. Yeah. Here we go. Fukushima plume model showed 1 million atoms. So when you see Becquerel, what produces the Becquerel? It's the atom, right? And so each atom is producing a Becquerel every second. And so they don't want to put 1 million atoms, because then you're going to visualize breathing that in or drinking it or landing on your food and eating it. They want you to think of the energy, and they barely want you to conceive that, so they don't actually explain it, right? So what they're talking about in this study is per square meter, it's on the ground. It's going to simulate into... Now, you remember, right? You're getting full-body X-rays because of the gammas, the alphas, the neutrons, the betas don't like each other. So what you're talking about, that just that number there, which is unconscionable, by the way, pre-Fukushima, it was just on... I've never heard of those numbers pre-Fukushima. And... so every species in that square meter, we're talking every square meter, we're not talking about a square meter here and a square meter over there, we're talking about every square meter at 1 million atoms. This was the xenon 133. There was 20 million, 20 million particles. This is different than atoms. This is from the evaporation of cement and steel and rebar and rocks and everything else and water. Becoming ionized and radiated and atomized in aerosol. These are particulates itself, particles. They're way worse. So that's 20 million pulses of energy, serious energy though, per liter of just the cesium iodine 131. And for every iodine one, which is brutal it's brutally effective for ionizing your thyroid gland, which is where you're producing your hormones for your body. But it doesn't stop there. It ends up in all your other muscles and organs. There's 10 times more 132, iodine 132. There's 30 times more iodine 133 and 31 times more iodine 129. So you look for that study, and sure enough, there's that study that quantifies that study, and that study quantifies that study. And that study, then both of those studies quantify 10 times more iodine 132 and 30 times more iodine 133 in the same sample. And the iodine 132 and the iodine 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands, the pituitary and adrenaline glands, than the incredibly effective iodine 131 is. So the ground is covered. In order for all the ground to be a square meter, because when you see this connotation of a square meter, you're talking about disposition. When you're seeing per liter, you're talking about incredible. Rain doesn't fall by the liter, and then this water runs all over the place, right? Lakes and estuaries and streams, and that's a big problem too, because now you're destroying that habitat, which is the food source for many other species, right? Transported rapidly to Canada, which means the plains are permanently infested with anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout. All plains are. And just because you can't smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or perceive it, right, you become very complacent. Literally living in a fantasy world. That everything is okay. My government loves me. And besides, if I come into contact with it, I'll turn into the Hulk or Spider-Man, right? Or even worse, Homer Simpson. Is there an acceptable decontamination procedure for equipment in such an environment? No. In fact, the USS Ronald Reagan, which was within a kilometers of the nuclear meltdowns, they actually grinded the decks of it 3 different times trying to get rid of the high doses. But they took it to the shipyards in Washington, I think it was. Is there an acceptable decontamination procedure? No. If so, who could provide it? Nobody can. Well, like, there are stories of the radioactive cars being sent back from different countries. Africa wasn't one of them. Africa would charge you an extra $20 to decontaminate the car. That's the gallows laugh, because you can't decontaminate the car. It's a sick friggin' joke. Trust me, it's just a sick joke. It's not a very nice one either. It's a true story, what I'm telling you, by the way. If an operator contacts us, but they were told by the industry I got to do is shampoo the car or scrub down the car, and the car would be decontaminated. And so they tell their customers, well, for an extra $20 we can decontaminate it for you. It simply can't be done. You can burn it in an incinerator, you can't destroy it on top of that. And it has another property, right? Because there's so much of it out there. You're getting all these x-rays. And so you got the gammas, the alphas, the neutrons, and the betas, pulsing, hitting each other at the speed of light perpetually. It'd be like endless fireworks going off everywhere you look. Everywhere you look. If you could see it. And that causes this effect. The Wigner effect, that material is actually radioactive. Just from bombardments. And so it's putting out energy too. So the trees that are sucking up the radiation and the plants that are producing the pollen, wherever it lands, the leaves land or the pollen lands, they're radioactive. And so they're like you know how a magnet, how you can take like a battery and steel and you can just make magnets all day long? Well, the radiation can radiate everything. So it's a cycle that will eventually sterilize the whole planet, and it's not too far in the future at all. It's not very far in the future because there's so much of it, and Fukushima was a pulse event. If an operator contacts us that they believe they are contaminated, who should they contact for assistance for safe cleanup of the contaminants? The ash, the dust, and other airborne particulates, isotopes could be on the outside of the aircraft, inside the fuel leach, and bleed in the seats, in your duct system, your filtration system. It's everywhere. Inside the engines, yeah. That's a very good question. But the reality of it is the industry is not going to acknowledge the absolute horror of these emissions, because if the world finds out about it, it's going to be nasty right away. Is the particulate altered by heat from passing through a jet engine? No. Will it pose a threat to somebody disassembling, maintaining the engine at a later time? Yeah, forever. How high in the atmosphere, stratosphere, troposphere will the plume of debris go? All the way. How long will it be there and be hazardous? Long past the human experience. There'll be dinosaurs back on this planet. It'll still be there. Is the particulate altered by heat from passing through a jet engine? No. Is the particulate, the radioactive fallout that is coming out of the reactor and present in the atmosphere, corrosive, incredibly corrosive? And there was this story, I got it there somewhere, I don't know where. In the 60s, there was this big release from a nuclear power plant. And the people in it, which is, I think it was 3 Mile Island actually, and the people in the community woke up one morning and their windows, their car windows, were all just completely denigrating from the radioactive. It was incredible radioactive fallout. And because the people didn't understand it, they're all like, well, you got to buy us new windows. And the industry's like, yeah, sure, man. We'll get you new windows. Excellent. Well, that's a great idea. And everybody went back to their homes and got sick and fucking died later from it. Is the particulate that is coming out of the reactors and present in the atmosphere is corrosive? Yes. Does it have an impact upon metals like aluminum, low and high strength? On everything. The Wigner effect is applicable to everything. Particularly your children, your friends, and your families, and your loved ones. But all materials. Does it impact composite materials like carbon fiber? Yeah, 100%. It's called a Wigner effect, is the best way to describe it. But it's a neutron bombardment. It breaks the integrity on an atomic scale. It takes the integrity of the metal and everything else away in a short order, too. A small amount of it might take 10 or 15 years. But the plumes we're talking about is not small amounts. What I found fascinating was on the research expeditions, the British Columbia, from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year doing species counts. Species are gone. But another thing that was gone was the shells on the beaches. And the beaches were made of shells. And so you got millions of years of shells breaking down into fine particulates, and that's the beautiful golden beaches in the 27,000 islands, from Vancouver Island to Alaska, British Columbia, Canada. And it was very difficult to find any shells on a beach. And you would talk about mussel shells and clams like little necks and razorbacks and manillas. You were talking about snails and many, many different species of snails. You were talking about abalones and scallops, and many different species of scallops, and oysters, many different species of oysters, and sea urchin shells, and all kinds of these shells, gooey ducks, and that's what the beaches were made of, was these shells breaking down. And I know that because I was diving. I remember diving. It was the first time I ever seen it, and I was diving this. It was rough weather. We were hid way behind a bunch of islands, but it was still really rough there, and so you weren't able to go into shallow water. It was just too rough. And we were doing harvesting, and so I was working on boulders. I don't like boulders. Working on boulders because boulders got caves, and inside the caves are always these little monsters, like a 150-pound octopus, and even worse. But anyway, I was working the edge of these boulders, and I was trying to get away from it. I didn't feel comfortable. I don't like it. I don't like scary. I don't like caves when I'm underwater at all. But it's good. It's good picking grounds. They're the best, but it's a very intimidating place to work. Trust me. And anyway, I had to bridge a gap. There was a beach up. You can see. I knew where I got dropped in, I was going to have to go past this little beach, right? And there was a big drop off behind me, so I kind of had to stay close. I had a limited amount of room, let's put it that way. And I'm lugging around a 500-pound bag, right? And so I work with the current, let the current carry me. And I'm going past. I'm down about 30 feet anyway, and I'm going past the beach. I know this is the beach. Because there's no rocks, and you can see the rocks over there about 100 feet away. And so as far as down as I could see, and as far as up as I can see, was shellfish. So imagine if you took container ship loads of shellfish and stacked them neatly on top of each other, layer after layer after layer after layer after layer, for 50 or 60 feet tall and 100 feet wide. That's what I was looking at. There's enough shells left over, rather. These were old shells, different forms of decomposition. There's enough calcium there probably to give everybody calcium for 100 years, just in that one spot. Incredible. It was incredible. And so were the beaches. Just let me expand on that for 1 second, because you got to kind of see it, I guess, to appreciate it. I got a few pictures here. That's from the research expeditions. And so you got all these different shells, right? And so there's your typical beach. And there's many species, right? They're beautiful species, many different types of shellfish. But going to a beach that are formed by these shells breaking down over millenniums and not seeing any shells. Now, I'm familiar with all of this, right? 14 years diving. This was my payback, was being able to have, live with these species, hang out with these incredible species. It's unbelievable. It's really amazing to see all these species to your left. They're exterminated. The species to your right is the same beaches. But no matter where you went in British Columbia, all Alaska, down to California, these are the pictures you would have took. You'll never take these pictures again. And so the species to your left, I couldn't find them post-Fukushima. That's what it would look like in 2011 to your left. And I was up there for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year. And it might look pretty cool, but you got any idea how much maintenance, work, effort, time, energy, monetary, just to put this operation together, and to get it to work every day, to get it to work every day, because typically this is what it looks like, right? That's your typical day. It's a very, very, now, because the radioactive fallout is real, not a game. By the way, 55 countries banned food in 14 prefectures, and thank goodness, for a decade at least anyway. At least they say they did. Canada is not one of them. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days, Stephen Harper. They're actually growing food right alongside 1-ton bags. They picked up 30 million of these 1-ton bags, which was 3% of the land. Let's get back on track to the story. We are on track, but let's get back to the story. And it took me 2 hours to get the snow off the trailer because everything was frozen, and then get a tarp over everything so it's going to be usable. And we're going to have a little bit of, we're waiting for enough snow to get down. Figures you get a skidoo and it won't snow enough to get out there. It's the oldest joke in the book, by the way. But meanwhile, I got a lot of maintenance I'm getting done. All right, let's keep going. That's not where I wanted to be. I think I lost track of where I wanted to be. That's okay, we'll get it. There, yeah, right around here somewhere. Japanese public television based in California would like a photo or a moving image of what it would look like if a meltdown were to occur. Oh, we don't. It did occur, right? It actually ejected, reactor 3 ejected the fuel pools and the reactor cores right out of the buildings. Just, if you ask the scientists, though, you got some courage, because these are the nuttiest creatures we've ever seen. New York Times, Henry Fountain has questioned about the international nuclear event scale. So we went and asked the nuclear scientist. He said, yeah, it's like a banana and a potato chop walking in sunshine. Marine Public Broadcasting, Keith Shortall. Why is the 50-mile radius recommended in Japan and a 10-mile evacuation in the United States? Let's ask the nuclear scientist. Oh, because it's like a banana and a potato chip or walking in sunshine. Just for your knowledge, Holly doesn't think we need to respond to these kinds of emails, comments that criticizes the chairman. And just ask the nuclear scientist. There's one right there. According to various sources, including the Nuclear Energy Institute, Mr. Jaczko told Congress that the commission believed all the water was gone from the Unit 4 pool. This is Peter Wolfinger, on March 17th. Jaczko told Congress that the commission believed all the water was gone from Unit 4 pool, which means it's going to melt down, right? Given the plethora of other information related to the pool perimeters, together with the laws of physics, unless the pool was breached, I do not see how we can believe that. Now, he's criticizing the actual head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, saying he must be wrong. I've seen no mention of pool breach. Rather, I see this as completely inappropriate behavior on his part. We got a picture of him, actually. Yeah, that's him. Trust me. So he says that nothing got out of the fuel pools over there. Nothing got out because he didn't see anything written about it. But if you looked at the pictures, this is what we're up against. We're up against the worst humans conceivable. I am not saying that the situation is not bad. However, we are in the nuclear industry. We in the nuclear industry, they're different than everybody else, of course, on the planet, must convey to the media only that which is known. Well, let's have a look at it again. No, there's no fuel pool. It's gone. I mean, just because the media pretends they're at the fuel pool, does it really mean it's there? Because if you go to TIPCO's website, you can check that picture yourself and you'll see that it doesn't exist, right? We in the nuclear industry must convey to the media only that which is known. I view that what the Commission believes in this case is as unsubstantiated, and I am respectfully disputing it. If you're not respectfully disputing it, bring some evidence to the table next time. Here's our evidence. Yeah, it's gone. Where's your evidence? It's not gone. Is it this? This is the questioning attitude developed over 40 years in the commercial nuclear power industry. So they're putting themselves above everybody and everything with those types of connotations, aren't they? If I am wrong, that's fine too. But let's think, well, if you're wrong, make sure you're right before you criticize somebody like I do, okay? At least have the courage and fortitude to do that. But let's think through things before we start telling stories of doom to the Congress. There are plenty of other people to do it, yeah, and certainly there is, isn't it? That's the media saying that they're at the top of that building to your left, 150 feet above the stump. A nuclear meltdown stump. We got problems. We can't trust the universities, the school of mass destructions anymore. And we certainly can't trust media, my goodness. Blatant lies, right? I am saying that those associated with the nuclear industry need to get a diverse spectrum of people involved who know what they are talking about. Yeah, like his brother, George. I mean, these are journalists. This is ABC Australia's Cecilia Vega, BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, the CBS Seth Dorn, another creature there, CNN. But they're only a fraction of the media pretending that they're on top of the fuel pool, which means we don't have a single media that we can turn to, do we? So we created our own media to come out like the trip on the ocean was for 6 years was absurdly difficult and expensive and resource intensive, okay? But these shows are the same. This whole operation is I don't have any crappy stuff. Everything I got comes from the same suppliers as the TV stations. The operation was built to convey a story in a proper format and to sustain it. And we've paid a dear, dear price in order, because there's an urgency in this story, see? It's a very important story. Peter Wolfinger, please convey this to Mr. Jaczko. said, right now I'm respectfully challenging the experts to find and utilize someone who with real experience. So the experts don't have experience, is what they're saying. And a questioning attitude so we don't spread unnecessary panic. So that the truth don't come out. So Peter Wolfinger is at nuclearsupport.com is a horrible monster. He's an actual monster. And that's in the picture of him when he was young right there. He just got out of university in that picture. Bloomberg News. Oh, Bloomberg News and Bloomberg News. Well, like statistical information on the spent fuel. Statistical information. And so they got Lake Barrett. He's actually mentioned somewhere in this stuff. I don't know if I'll get to it tonight. Let me see. We got the little creature here somewhere. Talking to Bloomberg in that first couple of days. They try to make him look human, like someone that breathes air and drink water. It was a hopeless... It was a hopeless attempt, though, unfortunately. I'm going to play that clip for you of Lake Barrett. I got to do my yellow magic here. I'm going to put that over the microphone so I don't forget to turn the mic back on when the video's over. If I do, just somebody text me, right?
For the first time, potentially fatal levels of radiation have been discovered outside the crippled nuclear plant, raising concerns that contamination is working its way further into Japan's water and food supplies and foreshadowing a long and expensive cleanup. Nuclear engineer Lake Barrett knows what it takes to mop up a catastrophic mess like this. Lake led the initial response to the 3 Mile Island accident here in the United States. He's with us this morning from Washington. Lake, where are the major concerns?
Well, the iodine-131 that you hear about, that has an 8-day half-life, so that decays away fairly quickly. I think they should be fine from a health point of view.
Lake, we're beginning to hear more about plutonium. What's the significance of plutonium in this situation?
Plutonium is something that is more emotional than it is technical in this situation. I think the biggest concern people have is the cesium and the strontium and the iodine in the short haul. Yes, there is some plutonium in there. There's always plutonium in reactor fuel. So it makes more emotional news to talk about plutonium.
All right, let's talk about...
It's going to be decades and many billions of dollars to clean it up, but it's just a large industrial catastrophe internally to the plant. It's not a health catastrophe for the country.
Not a health catastrophe yet, but here lots of stuff appears to have been exposed to the atmosphere, and radiation is finding its way already into vegetables and the Tokyo water supply. So at what point in your mind does it become a health disaster as opposed to just an operational disaster?
You're going to start have findings of some radioactivity outside for weeks ahead, so there'll be news about it. But I don't think overall it's going to be a huge health catastrophe that some people predict. Well, the iodine-131 8-day half-life, so that decays away fairly quickly.
So compare, if you will, this situation to what we saw take place at Chernobyl and the after effects of Chernobyl over the past 25 years.
Well, I think Chernobyl was a much worse situation. That was a Soviet reactor that basically blew itself up and spread things all over the area there. This is a different type of reactor. There's a lot of water, and most of the radioactivity is kept in the water locally on the plant, although you can see, leakage outside the plant. But I don't think we expect to see a Chernobyl-type situation there.
Okay. Blake, thanks so much for joining us. It's Lake Barrett, a nuclear engineer and former deputy director of the Office of Civilian Radioactive Waste Management.
Yeah, Lake Barrett. It's hard to appreciate how much I hate his fucking guts. Excuse the language. So they said there was no explosion at Fukushima. That's quite entertaining. There's no human in Lake Barrett. It's true. I've been at this a long time, but I'm still shocked by the contempt that they have. They knew these jobs existed, right? You had to get an education to get a job to come out and lie to people. They could have made a lot more money getting a real job, but they chose that job. They chose to. It just defies, to me, it defies logic, if there's such a thing as logic. Good morning, Alicia Roscoe. Would like someone to answer a few questions that were not answered yesterday, such as, does the Non-Regulatory Commission have emergency planning and drills at nuclear plants? Yeah, they got the fire department going to rush in there and try to put out a nuclear fire. And all the first responders are going to rush right to the plant while everybody else abandons. They got evacuation roads so everybody can run away. Not gas plants, coal plants, oil plants, but nuclear plants. And the reality of it is, all you can do is run away. You can't run that way. They done that at 3 Mile Island, by the way, because people were so complacent when there was work out of a meltdown at 3 Mile Island. People actually ran to 3 Mile Island. People did run away, don't get me wrong. But there's pictures that I just can't comprehend of all kinds of people gathered up outside of 3 Mile Island. That's the gallows laugh. Organization CBS, National Network, they're just degenerates, eh? Information on nuclear facilities that have been fined or shut down for a period of time. That's what they were seeking. Really? Because they didn't have it in their archives, apparently. You know, they're the news. Why would they have real information, right? CNN would like to send a reporter out to the headquarters, to talk about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I think. Their goal is to show everyone what the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is doing to assist Japan. We would like to do a walkthrough if possible. Yeah, the media went down and said that they're on top of the fuel pool, which is at the top of a 190-foot building that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, my goodness. That's quite frightening, isn't it? Configuration of a spent fuel pool in Japan, how it handles in Japan versus plants in the United States. The Fukushima reactor, they have 70 a fuel pool, which the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. They have 70 identical, or 73 it used to be, identical reactors in the United States. They're identical in every shape and form, identical. And to keep the fuel at the top of the buildings in the worst place, first off, they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, let alone Japan or the United States or Canada. And that's where they store the fuel, because it's splitting atoms. You can't contain it. It'll detonate. And if you put it in a cask and put it in the ground, eventually it's going to breach. When it breaches, it'll detonate. And then it'll burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, and hell will follow for millions of years on this planet. Fox News, Los Angeles, Wall Street Journal. Statement by the French regulators that there is water in a number 4 reactor. Well, let's have a look here. No, there's nothing there. 3/4 plus of the building is actually missing. The fuel pools, which are 150 feet above the stump, are missing. San Francisco Chronicle. What the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is saying about winds from Japan to the United States. Like, we got the studies of the winds from Japan to the United States and to the rest of the planet. This model is only based on 20 days, by the way. It covers the whole planet right away. And guess where the planes are flying? You guessed it, right in that plume. And that's only 20 days. The plume covers the whole planet. I'll show you another one in a minute. Document MSNBC referred to that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has an Indian Creek being the most vulnerable to earthquakes. I do believe they're talking about Indian Point, not Indian Creek. The good news is that our site satisfaction has also been trending upwards, site satisfaction, to levels never seen before. Some people's kids play. Individual was educated about radiation, looking for quantitative basics For our conclusion, the radiation effects in Southern California would not be harmful. He was specifically concerned that even a small level of radiation in addition to weapons fallout would add up over time. Oh. Well, this is the plutonium-239 dispersal. This model is based on TEPCO's flawed numbers that omitted the nuclear meltdowns and the fuel pools. But there's enough plutonium in that plume after 20, that's 20 days up there and 21 days here. That's enough plutonium to give everybody a significant cancer on the entire planet, I should say. And it ain't just plutonium we got to worry about, unfortunately. And if you see all of these plumes, when you see that, it's going to be the same for cesium. There's the cesium plume with 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. There's going to be iodines and everything else. Uranium, plutonium, americium, plutonium, curium. The nastiest isotope out there is curium. Indicated that our conclusion about no harmful radiation reaching the United States accounted for the duration of exposures. I referred them to RadNet and the CDC phone number. I also referred them to our website for news releases, and specifically the press release that had a calculation showing how the dose drops off with distances for doses. Well, it doesn't, right? The distance, 5,500 miles, was 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air of cesium-137, for goodness sakes. This is the French government. And this is what that model looks like. And all the models basically look identical to that. It just happens to have the prettiest colors. I like those colors. They're so pretty. That's a death plume for every species. That's what you're looking at. That's a death plume. Each atom's pulsing energy for 600 feet every second in every direction. You're talking about an invisible snowstorm of it. Pretending it never happened is the worst solution, unfortunately. I would love to pretend it never happened. I'd give anything for it to never have happened. A former top International Atomic Energy Agency official, actually Fukushima is a catastrophe of the entire planet. And this is what we're going to poll tonight, asking that question. Did Fukushima nuclear meltdowns, radioactive fallout, curium, uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and 1,000 other fission products poison every species and every human on the Earth? And the answer is yeah, Dana. Yes. Sounds like we could emphasize that no harmful levels are expected here. They're really terrible people, aren't they? Very high concentrations. For example, extended periods of exposure, half a chest X-ray per day. X-rays, you turn it on, you turn it off, right? We're talking about full body X-rays every second for the rest of your life from the radioactive fallout. You're talking about breathing it, drinking it, eating it, showering in it, washing in it, cooking your food into it, doing your dishes in it, your clothing in it. It shouldn't exist, right? That's the saddest. It's the saddest story ever, because we trust the scientists, and that was our biggest mistake, was we trust scientists. It's just terrible, isn't it? A terrible thing to say is that we can't trust the scientists. Bad enough we can't trust the journalists. But the silence from every discipline of academics is really heartbreaking. My first thoughts, we can send them to RadNet, the EPA, monitor radiation levels. We know RadNet was technical information at that time. The layperson had no hope of appreciating or comprehending it, and they were notorious for downplaying it. And just say that the non-regulatory commission, EPA, both agree that at this point no danger is being monitored. And so my first thoughts, this was Amy, the scumbag, March 17th. to downplay every facet of it. And just say the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Environmental Protection Agencies both agree that at this point no danger is being monitored. I can guarantee you that it's horrifying that people like that actually exist regarding the question. So this was a transplant surgeon from the United Kingdom, from the University of from Kathleen Higley's to Dr. Geraldine Thomas's to. Hey, I actually forget the name of that university. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing. So comparable risks of death. This doctor who does transplants, he irradiates humans and they try to transplant organs and legs and everything else. It never works because they kill every cell in their body. So he was brought down to Fukushima to the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, to sue them about their worries. And he said working at the nuclear meltdowns are equal to smoking 14 cigarettes a day, or eating peanut butter, or spending 20 days in New York, or driving 600 kilometers in a car. And the most egregious one, I think, is kayaking for 15 minutes. But we're talking about nuclear meltdowns. And so he wanted, how do you get people to go in and sacrifice themselves for corporations? Eh? This is how he done it. And all of these are just frightening. And that in the real world, he would have lost his degree for saying this kind of stuff. Right? They pulled a degree away from him, and he should be end up in jail for the rest of his life. Minimum, right? Or the families of the victims should be allowed to tear him apart. And just say that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Environmental Protection Agency both agree that at this point no danger is being monitored. Just terrible people. And we got their names, thank goodness. Government data, the United States was hit with the worst fallout the year after Fukushima began. It never stopped, by the way. And radioactive cesium spiked to the highest levels ever recorded in the histories of Environmental Protection Agency's radiation networks. But we know within the first 20 days, the plume was 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, according to the French government, of cesium-137, for instance. So to say it was even worse a year later coming in, it's pretty rough. It's a terrible industry, isn't it? Amy Ron, do we have somewhere to direct folks regarding the basis for our conclusions that the effects on the U.S. West Coast would not be harmful? Remember her. By the way, nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. A single atom in your body will eventually end up with a tumor. And you put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle. You can't see it. Just one of them will eventually turn into a tumor if you got it in your body. Significant amounts of Fukushima radiation detected on the West Coast. Well, the species were exterminated, as I showed you on the research expeditions. You know, it's hard to imagine I'm still doing this all these years later because there's no one to replace me. That freaking terrifies me every day. That bothers me every day. I never dreamt for a second that all this work I put in would lead to nobody else talking about it. I never conceived that would be possible, right? The idea of running these educational programs was to have a debate, and with real information, not the industry's version. And it's just the beginning of the onslaught. Scientists have no clue about what's coming. The real goal was downplaying damage to the Pacific. And don't you think they didn't hate me for doing the research expeditions that I showed you earlier? I mean, the hate on me is still something special, isn't it? Like I actually get energy from hate, so I don't mind it. It's what keeps me ticking. I don't mind the hate at all. It doesn't bother me. I'm not a bad person for being honest, okay? Nobody can convince me that I am. I care about the planet, I care about the people, and I care very dearly about the species. I am very, very, very motivated to put the stake in the nuclear industry's heart. I do believe I already accomplished that anyway. There is no nuclear renaissance, I can tell you that much. And where was the descending voices that caused that, I wonder? This little tiny group of people. Just this little tiny group of people that refuse to go away. I'll never go away. They chop me up, put me in a box, and dump me into the dead ocean, but I'm still never going to go away. Like, I've created a stupid amount of material over the years, the last couple of decades. Just stupid. I'm probably the most prolific producer of documentation, period. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but in my world, I think it is. I know the CDC is answering health questions. I can imagine that. Oh, it's like a banana. It's like kayaking for 15 minutes. The scumbags. But we would be the ones calculating the dose from the radiation data. I like it. I like it when I got their documentation. Japanese author, extreme increases in mortality caused by cardiac diseases in Fukushima. Too many bananas, Deanna. Death rates might give the creeps to some people. That's 2012. There was 865,000 extra excess cancers in 2012 also. In 2012, there was 13,646 out of 38,000 children with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters. Their thyroids are only 2 centimeters at that age, by the way. And the thyroid is your most important gland in your body. Your most important organ, right? It produces the hormones that regulates every function in your body. The number of deaths was up 12.5%, an extra 12,700 people just in Fukushima compared to the same month of the year before. Cancer was up, cardiac diseases. But the real problem hits in increments over a few years, right? It takes a few years for it to really manifest. But I mean, there's 865,000 extra cancers. There was 35.6% of the children with thyroid tumors. It used to be 1 in a million. Now it's 36.6%, 36.5%, 365,000 out of a million is what it would scale up to. When it used to be 1 in a million. Children. Will there be inspection for radiation on imported cars from Japan? There was 3 different countries we covered the stories where they shipped the cars back because they were so radioactive. Thank goodness. But how many got through, see? Are there any concerns of contamination? Well, everything's contaminated in Japan, right? Japan's right there. Everything's contaminated. It's the source. And it contaminates the entire planet. So how bad is the source going to be, right? I feel bad for him. But that's reality. You got to deal with it because it's nuclear, and you better deal with it. Radiation reaching the United States. Models are being used in U.S. I mean, this is 19.5 days. This is nasty stuff. Reuters, scumbags. Question: has a quote in his publication, "Low levels of radiation headed towards the United States." Well, there is no low levels. But low doses do cause heart diseases and strokes, by the way. These weren't low doses. These were insidious plumes I've showed you quite a bit earlier, right? And by the way, 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. In adults. And your parents, your grandparents, yourselves. 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in your vital organs. Irreversible lesions. So it also means your immune system is compromised because you're saturating that area for the rest of your life with white blood cells to try to mitigate it, right? And so you have less oxygen, less nutrition. Because every white blood cell is displacing a red blood cell. The red blood cells carries oxygen and nutrition. Peter Wolfinger, man, what a disgusting challenge to Jaczko statement and conclusions. all the water was gone from the Unit 4 fuel pool, according to the Nuclear Energy Institute and Mr. Jaczko, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Well, the fuel pool's at the very top of a 190-foot building. The building doesn't exist anymore, so the water's gone, clearly. Given the plethora of other information related to the pool's perimeters, together with the laws of physics, unless the pool was breached, well, let's see, the building's ejected, reactor 1 detonated. There goes all the water and the fuel. And reactor 3 was with the plutonium X oxide, is a completely different explosion, right? It ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the buildings. So Wolfinger should be held accountable for what he's doing, right? But they knew this when they looked at the original footage. I mean, he's talking about reactor 4, but what about reactor 3? Clearly, the building is chopped in half. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. But when you look at reactor 3, because these pictures were available right away in the first week, the first couple of days, right? Once the detonation happened, this was the picture that went around the world, right? So when you see this, you don't need a paper from the Nuclear Regulatory or anybody else. You just need a picture. Every academic on the planet, including Peter Wolfinger, when he seen that picture, he knew it was gone. And so what he was doing, he was the cover story. He was the cover-up. He's the public relation firm at nuclearsupport.com. What does that tell us, right? Nuclearsupport.com. So his job is to throw everybody and every species on the planet under the bus, so to speak. Yep. La 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 la. Yeah, we gotta put your work done again today. Ha ha. Just keep chipping away every day. Keep chipping away for 2 or 3, 4 hours. I can't do the whole day. I just don't have it anymore. But if I can do 2 or 3 hours every day, and I do, keep chipping away at it. Yeah, I had to fix the tail lights too. I was putting a tarp on the trailer so that I can use it, because I had to go and get a tarp, a nice tarp. And I wanted something thick, and I wanted something that I can just shake and get the snow to come off it, because I got tracks on the trailer, right, for hooking in the winches, right, or the straps. It makes it much more easier. You can put a strap anywhere, right? And they fill up with snow, and so I'm using the compressor just to clear it, everything, and then put a tarp over it. It's a bit of work. Tomorrow the plan is to relocate the battery, because it's in the way for the skis. So I got to do some more welding, right, so I can get it down lower, out of the way. But anyway, I noticed one of these wires was hanging. I was like, what the hell is that? And that was the lights on the back of the trailer. The wire had got broken. So I got these, I don't know, I'm digressing. Just give me a minute, just train of thoughts. I got these tubes with the solder in the center of it, right? And you put the wire on one side, wire on the other side, and use the heat gun and just heat it up and melts the solder and solders it together. And it makes it waterproof too, right? And so we had snow and freezing temperatures. I'm out there with a heat gun in my hand trying to solder up. It's a better way to solder, right? I never did like soldering. I don't mind. I got a pretty steady hand, but let's keep going here. We already done this. Okay, here we go. Unit 4 pool. I mean, the fuel pools are those red depictions at the top. There's 2 of them. They're stuffed with reactor cores for decades. That's the stump of the building over there, and you can see this spot over there. Some people will say, well, that's the fuel pool right there, Dana. I've had them try that over the years. That's the fuel pool right there, Dana. No, that's the elevator shaft where they would lower the fuel down. There would be a truck down there. And they would put the cast on the truck, and then the truck would drive out the building, right? That's an elevator shaft. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. The top of the building would be about right here with my fingers to. The building doesn't exist, see? And when you look at the guts hanging out of the buildings, like I'm not going to treat people as if they're fucking stupid, okay? I'm sure everybody can see that big gaping hole, and everybody can see this nightmare. This was a 19-story, 190-foot, 65-meter building. There's nothing left. Everything was blown right at the bottom of it. Whatever was down there got blown out too. There is no reactor core. There is no fuel pool there at the top of the buildings. But he ignores reactor 3, how interestingly, right? And even today, they refuse to acknowledge that the reactor 4 fuel pool is gone, even today. Getting close to 14 years later. Feels like we just started yesterday. La 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 la. Scientific America. I trust Ted Bundy before I trust any media. I don't trust Ted Bundy, right? March 17th. Oh, questions for comment. Why are we suggesting a large evacuation in Japan? You know, because the reactors blew up, stupid. Daily Beast, who said they were restarting reactor 4. Remember that? What year was that? 2015 or something? Tucker Carlson was there then, I think, was it? Or was that political? I can't remember now. Would like to talk to someone about acute radiation syndrome. Pick me. Travel Weekly. These were all requests, right, to the Regulatory Commission. Request information, question whether or not people traveling from Japan to other areas, if they are carrying emitting radioactivity, can transmit it to others on the plane or others surrounding them. Yes. They contaminate the seat too, right? So the next people, everybody else that sits in that seat forever is going to be getting brutal doses. Everybody within 600 feet of them are getting brutal doses. Let's put it that way. From the gamma shines, neutron bombardments of the material that is embedded in their hair, their clothing, their eyelashes, their luggage. It's shocking. The whole story is just heartbreaking. It should never have got to this. The industry should never have lasted this long. And they corrupted everything now, and they compromised the future. They destroyed the future of all the species. We're seeing nothing but emaciated birds, emaciated whales of every species. And denying that this is real means you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Whether or not people traveling from Japan to other areas, if they are carrying emitting radioactivities, yeah, they are. Political. Speaking of political. Reports in various publications stating radioactive forecast for the United States wants to comment from the non-regulatory commissions. Where information is coming from. Is it valid? And what is the forecast for the United States? What are the protective measures? Well, the forecast for the United States is perpetual radioactive fallout. Knucklehead. These are all journalists who could have looked it all up on their own. They turned to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission because they wanted their version, not the truth, see? And when you think about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, how many people were working? Now remember, there's 4 million emails. The links are below, right? And they're always at the bottom of every video. You go down the description, you'll see it. Freedom of Information from 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. Taking up valuable real estate in my description. But because they're the most important, that's your evidence. That's your perpetual evidence. Can you read 4 million emails? Can you? I can't. I'm trying. I can't. It's mind-numbingly boring. Now look at all these names. This is their CCing their propaganda to all of these people and all of these people. Please distribute it to everyone who serves in and supports the Op Center in response to the events from Japan. So they sent it to all of them and all of these and all of those and all of them. And every one of these and every one of those and all of them. It's really staggering, isn't it? Like, oh my goodness. Being evil seems to be quite a career for a lot of people. It's hard to wrap your mind around it, isn't it? There's so many evil people. And look how many of them works for the nuclear industry. All of these are evil people. They're going to fuck you over, every one of them. That's what they get paid to do. There's big money. It takes a lot of money to fund that much propaganda, I can tell you that much. And this, as you know, is only a fraction of the kill machine against humanity. It's prolific. Harmful levels of radiation reach the United States. KIRO TV, Seattle, Washington. Has the danger of radiation on the West Coast increased? What would happen in the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario, the reactor blows up. Oops. And the plume covers the whole planet. Oops. That is the worst case scenario, and that's what happened. It's the worst case scenario. Well, the worst case scenario was the fuel pools were at the top of the buildings. As the gallows laugh, folks. I can't tear any more hair out of my head because I'll be bald. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Tom Fox from Fox News. Hey, I'm Tom Fox from Fox News. Jesus. Imagine him practicing that in the mirror all day, every day. That's what he does when he goes to the bathroom, take a leak. Hey, I'm Fox. Tear up Tom Fox at Fox News. NBC News. They're such dirtbags, eh? Would like some information regarding the radiation dissipating over the Pacific Ocean. Dissipating. Well, let's see if it dissipated. Radiation levels on the U.S. West Coast spiked to 1 million times normal. There's 1 million to 10 million atoms. 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137. Per cubic meter of air, and so the land is absolutely saturated with all these different isotopes. University of Texas researchers, Fukushima released so great that the radioactive aerosols in Washington were up to 100,000 times normal. 100,000 times weapons fallout. Sardinia's National Laboratory, scumbags. Comment, where can I find whole body counting? My employers have some employees returning from Japan would like to have the whole body counts done to establish if the employees are internally contaminated. Yeah, send them over to Woods Hole. They'll fix you right up. The scumbags over there or something, aren't they? They got their education to be a scumbag. They get a job to be a scumbag. It's crazy. I would imagine the average person can't possibly comprehend that, but that's actually what's going on in the real world. Pacific Information reports of a radioactive plume from Japan to the United States. So when the media is contacting the non-regulatory commission, they're not a journalist no more. Now they're just a public relation firm for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They're asking, what do you want us to say? A journalist is supposed to flush it out, doesn't need to go to the propaganda machine. They want to be consistent, see? We like to interview someone about the radioactive plume. The death plume. We like comments on the reports that came out of the nuclear safety yesterday criticizing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I'd like to speak to someone regarding the impact of radiation in Honolulu due to the crisis in Japan. So why would you contact the NRC? Why wouldn't you contact the universities that are doing the studies, right? Discovery Channel. You know, I hate them a little bit more than everybody else for what they done to me. Would like to know who's in charge of monitoring the radioactive plume as it comes from Japan. Who's in charge? Clearly not the Discovery Channel or the journalist. Requesting an interview with the most disgusting human out there, Lake Barrett. I played the video clip earlier. I'm not going to do that to you again. Was that Bloomberg? Oh, that's NBC. I played you Bloomberg's. I actually got the NBC's version of it there too. I can't handle 2 videos Lake Barrett in one day though, unfortunately. It sounds like we could be emphasizing no harmful levels are expected here. And then compare it to a chest x-ray or a banana or potato chip or water sunshine. Radioactive xenon-133 in Washington was 450,000 times above detection levels, persisted for weeks. University of Texas. This is a plume of 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air after 20 days, at 20 days, and 19 days. That's at 20 days. I mean, that's the whole planet. The plume never stops. It's hard to appreciate how it's like gas, oil, and coal emissions don't make plumes like that. Too bad, because carbon is really good for all the species, right? You can't have species without. You can't have any life without carbon. Carbon just recycles back into life. Cesium, by the way, immediately damages the heart muscles. It's not slow acting; it's immediate damage. So imagine being in a plume where that immediately damages the heart muscles. You've seen a lot of people drop dead of heart attacks. You've seen a lot of people with strokes. Kids. Teenagers. Oh, that's right, you're 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. I can never, like, I made this picture 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's a video, actually. I made the video. I'm not playing the video later because we've been playing it for over a decade. I made this over a decade ago. And all of these people are making about $1 million a year lying to you for the media. Traveling all over the world being a scumbag. Sacrificing you and your loved ones and your friends and your families for a nuclear industry. And when you say child's risk of cancer from radiation, it's not just cancer. It's heart problem, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. There's perpetual illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. It's actually 1,000 times worse than an adult. So guess how bad it is for insects and birds and mammals and animals. It's 1,000 times worse than it is for a child. Get out and see birds and bees while you can, because it won't be long now and there won't be any. Children with over 11 atoms a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems, which is a gamma. You can put 2 million of these atoms in the head of a needle, you can't see it. So 11 atoms, how are you going to protect your child from that? And it's irreversible heart damage for a child. At a lousy 50 atoms. It's impossible to avoid 50 atoms. When you had 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall, that never goes away of iodine-129, for instance, right? Which is also a gamma. Which is also a gamma. Oh, we're at that point again, are we? Ain't that great? Did Fukushima nuclear meltdown's radioactive fallout poison every species and every human on Earth? I do believe so, Mr. Dean. I do believe so. I guess that's it for us tonight. I need a cup of tea really bad here. Bit of a long day. That's okay. I think we had a pretty good week. I think we've done pretty good this week. I kept myself pretty well in check. Did I? No. I think I had a couple of videos where we're some colorful language. Some people say they're the better videos now. I like them. Excuse me. We still need one more like before I can quit, though. We only got 29 likes. I can't quit on an odd number. Needs one more like. Come on. I know you're out there. I think it takes like 15 seconds to show up on my end. Let me see here. Oh shit, James got another song out. I really like his last song. It's based on a story. I never checked last night, but when I listened to it after the show last night, he had a link to the story. And I actually captured it. I was supposed to cover it tonight, and I forgot to import it in with the show tonight. So I'll cover it on the next show, Sunday night. Or maybe tomorrow, or maybe Saturday morning. Who knows? Radioactive Cream, I'll bring up for you here. I put a link in it tonight because I really want people to watch it. I know they got them censored really heavy, but you still should listen to the video. And the graphics are amazing. My goodness, he's getting so good at it, eh? He's creating everything. He just put out this one, Manufacturing Nuclear Consent. He has the best names, eh? We're going to close the show down with that tonight. I'll come back and we'll close down the poll. Let me check the volume so I don't... That's about right. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night. Have a great weekend, too. A wonderful weekend. And we'll see you on Sunday night. Take care now.
They say nuclear will save the day, yet oceans bleed where the corium carved away. Tide pools emptied, life stripped bare, a legacy cloaked in polluted air. Our valley roars, people stall, they hawk the cure, the sick in soul. The banners cry that scripted song, while we're left to wonder what went wrong. Manufacturing nuclear consent, their truths are bent, their lies well spent. Behind the mask, a plan unfolds, while we inherit the ash and cold. Beneath their towers, fractures grow, silent risks that few will know. Regulators nod, the deal is done, while profit eclipses everyone. Oh, it's manufacturing nuclear consent, a cost they take, a future rent, a broken promise, a fractured claim, where shadows rise to stake their claim. The rivers writhe, the forests fade, their reckless wages steeply paid. A radiance dims, a beacon dies, as ruins swell beneath our skies. Manufacturing nuclear consent, a world dismantled, a fate they spent. Control is a name. Oh, it's manufacturing nuclear consent. A cost they take, a future spent, a polished lie, a fleeting grace, where greed consumes and scars this place. Manufacturing nuclear consent. Their green mirage, their monument. The future splinters, the past erased. They gamble lives for their embrace. Manufacturing nuclear consent. A poison pact, a world misspent. Manufacturing nuclear consent. Until we must dissent.